Good. Learning outcomes for today is lots of development. So we're going to be developing our understanding further of quarter notes, eighth notes and 16th notes by putting lots of different grooves together. So mixing up a lot of the information that we've learned to create more interesting and varied grooves, and also increase our repertoire.
Right.
Okay. What we're also going to do by using those the quarter notes, eighth notes and 16th notes, is we're going to strengthen our overall coordination. So we've got a greater control of the drum kit.
Greater control of the drum kit.
Absolutely.
It needs controlling.
It definitely needs control. There's no question about that. Then we're going to move on to really broaden our sort of theory and understanding of the technique in the coordination. And we're going to take a little bit of time over this lesson, not to play all of the exercises that are contained within the lesson, but to look at perhaps some of the pitfalls of when you're developing the coordination, and perhaps use some common experience as to where students have gone wrong in the past.
A bit of sort of tips and advice session.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right then.
Yeah. Lots of playing though.
Let's start with. Do you want to start with an exercise?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the first thing that we need to look at is to go back to the basic concept that we've been hammering on about in developing grooves. So the big thing that the viewers out there should be getting a hang of is the fact that we build our exercises together. When learning new rock grooves, it's a question of constructing the exercise. So getting the hi-hat line understood, understanding the position of the bass drum, the snare drum, putting them together through one-way, two-way, then three-way coordination.
Step by step on the structured pathway.
Absolutely, yeah. So what we're going to do is, referring back to lesson 2, those of our viewers that have seen lesson 2 and have got the lesson notes will see that there's 6 rock grooves in that lesson. Now in lesson 5 we looked at quarter notes, eighth notes and 16th notes on our hi-hat.
Yes.
So if we take the 6 basic rock grooves that we learnt in lessons 1 and 2 and then we apply the 3 hi-hat patterns, you can see now that we've got 18 rock grooves.
6 times 3 equaling 18.
That's what it says in my notes.
When you put it like that, I've got a calculator down here.
Oh,
I just checked it out. No, when you put it like that, it's amazing how these little steps can then massively, in a very short space of time, increase what we've got.
Well, exactly. So by the time somebody gets to grade 1, they're going to actually know an awful lot of drum grooves and drum patterns. They have quite a bit of variation in their playing. So this is what we're going to be building on in this lesson specifically. So it's kind of closing the end of the first half of our grade by looking at all of the rock grooves that are available to you with those combinations.
And as we are halfway, it's a good point to close it.
Correct.
All right, start playing for me.
Let's move on then, shall we? Just to describe what's in the lesson, we have the rock grooves with all the quarter notes as a reminder.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into the eighth note section here and have a look at some of the real common problems that we have. So, looking at exercise 7 here, you will see that this is the exercise that we covered in lesson 5.
Right.
Okay. So it's bass drum on 1 and 3, snare drum on 2 and 4, and then an eighth note ride line.
Yep.
Now what I'm going to do now is have a look at exercise 8 in this lesson. Play along with it, and you'll see that this is one of the exercises that we covered in lesson 2.
I remember this, mixing it up a bit, adding the extra note on the bass.
Yes, on the and of 3. Have a listen to it with the hi-hat pattern, very common, and then we'll play along with it, build a groove up as usual just to show how it should work, and then perhaps have a look at some more examples and where it can get a little bit tricky. Now the crucial part about this is when playing along is to make sure that your tempo is correct, that you're nice and steady with your performance, and that you're counting so you know where you are.
What speed are we going to go at?
We've got 80. We're going to go for 80. Here it comes. 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, so we've got the hi-hat in. Usual routine. Bass drum on 1 and 3 and 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Snare drum. 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. So usual routine there for building up your groove. Now, it's the same process one-way, two-way, three-way coordination for all of the exercises. Now, what I would do now is, with the exercises that you have there, is work through them methodically.
Yeah.
Look at the hi-hat line, look at the snare drum line, look at the bass drum line, and understand how they fit together. Now, I'm going to use number 10 as a prime example, if I may.
A prime example of what?
Well, a prime example of where coordination can be a little tricky when learning. So let's just have a look at the computer and the score that we've got here. The first half of the bar is almost identical to our first standard rock groove. Bass drum on 1 and 3, snare drum 2 and 4. But we've got a sneaky little fella here on the end where we've got the bass drum on the and of 4.
Ah.
Now you will see that that is attached to the snare drum line here.
Yeah.
Now this causes some confusion sometimes, and people, some of my students get confused as to where this note is played. Is it on the snare drum or is it on the bass drum? Just because it's joined to another note, they can be on different voices.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got snare drum, then bass drum.
Yeah, because we've got the snare drum being just there.
Yeah, on the middle space.
And then the bass
on the bottom space.
Down there. And then also, if you're repeating that, rather than just playing it as one bar on its own, you've then got the repeat of the bass drum again, which could throw you into a heck of confusion. It can do indeed.
Now, what I would ordinarily explain to a student in this particular example is to say, look where the notes tie up together. And, you know, in other exercises, look at where the notes don't tie up together. You know, we discussed unison and independence in lesson 2. So it's a question of, it's almost like following it along graphically in lines to see where the notes fall with each other and against each other. So what I'm going to do here is, with exercise 10, I'm just going to check my understanding by counting it out and making sure I'm positioning my bass drum underneath the hi-hat.
All right.
In this particular example, we're very fortunate because the bass drum always falls with the hi-hat.
Right.
Okay? So let me demonstrate. So, if we get our hi-hat line going, 2 and 3 and 4 and bass drum on 1, 2, 3, and also the and a 4. Not easy for me to count and talk at the same time, so I'll do it this time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2.
That is tricky.
3 and 4 and 1. So it's also leading back into the next bar, which can be a bit tricky. And 1. So it's making a connection between bar 1 and bar 2.
Yeah.
So it's almost like going over the bar line.
What I find really helps is, sometimes maybe if you're sort of a bit confused by looking at the music, is if you listen to it, if you hear someone like yourself play a tutor, or if you look at the video, then you actually get an idea of how it sounds and how you should be sort of imitating it. Definitely, no question about that. What you would do in the process here is look at the video, which we can do very briefly, is have a quick look at the video to see what the exercise is. The great thing about using the videos here is that you can stand back and have a look, count it through, check your understanding by looking at the notes and the video, run it around as many times, get it clear in your mind, and then have a go yourself. 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Yeah. Yeah. Keep that playing until you get it.
Yeah. Short clips, and again, it doesn't matter how many times you repeat the video. You know, you just keep looking at it, make sure you get the exercise, looking at the music, comparing to the video. 3, 4, and 1. See how that's sort of pulling it back into the next exercise. Now, what's quite nice about that is that by putting different notes in different parts of the bar, you create different sensations to the grooves as well. So each of these grooves has a very different feel. Yeah. So when you've got a bass drum note following a snare drum, it often pushes the beat forward. You're not changing the time remains the same, but it has that sensation of moving it forward. And let me demonstrate with exercise 10. All right. So if I just play a straightforward groove, bass drum on 1 and 3, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, it's got quite a chunky downward feel. The minute you put the bass drum pushing into the next bar, you get this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, pulling 4, and 1. Yeah, it's kind of pushing the beat forward. Now, that same sensation is created in exercise 11, but it's in a slightly different place, where what we've got here is the bass drum on the and of 2. But actually, it's the same coordination and the same sort of pattern as you've got from the and of 4 going into beat 1. Absolutely, but just a different positioning in the bar. Correct. I'll just demonstrate that for you. All right, let's have a listen to hear how that sounds. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Number 11. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3. And just compare it to the straightforward groove. And then again. 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3, 4. So it's got that sensation of just moving the beat, the pattern, the groove forward a little bit. That's the beauty of these new grooves, and having new grooves to play in different musical situations. Increases your musical vocabulary.